Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, playing a little hurt today, the one and only Eric Henry. And Eric, of course, a proud graduate of Tampa Catholic High School. He'll soon be returning home when the Texas Longhorns take on the Florida Gators at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, a.k.a. the Swamp, on October 4th when Texas and Florida kick off. Well, Texas kicks off SEC play, I should say. Excitement abounds, but this week Texas is off. But there's no shortage of things to talk about, Eric. If you missed our recap of the 55-0 rout of Sam Houston, make sure you go to the Horns247 YouTube channel to get all of that. But yesterday, we are recording on Wednesday, September 24th. Yesterday, we learned the Texas Longhorns SEC football schedules for the next 4 years. And there's some excitement. We also learned, Eric, that John Mateer, the quarterback at OU, is undergoing some hand surgery and is likely to miss the Texas-Oklahoma Red River shootout on October 11th, Eric.
Chip Brown, Horns247, Flagship Podcast, faithful viewers, good morning. Happy Wednesday morning. Appreciate you guys joining us on all the platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Appreciate you guys joining us. As Chip mentioned, Texas will head to Florida next week, face the Florida Gators, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Ironically, Chip, it's my first time going to the Swamp. Never been, so fired up about that, but we can get into more of that on next week. The pressing news coming out of the last few days, as you mentioned, the Texas Longhorns and the SEC as a whole getting the schedule, Chip, for the next few seasons. I like that. I like the fact you just get it all out of the way now, right? Just give you my quick thought there before we dive into the nuts and bolts of Texas' schedule. I love the idea of, hey, the NFL makes schedule release a thing. The NBA does, right? And I love the fact that the SEC is like, here's the next 3 years right here. So you know where you're going. If you're a fan, you got to love this, right? Like you can plan ahead, where you want to go, what trips you want to go. So I think it's great for that aspect. And yes, the news that John Mateer, Oklahoma quarterback, banged up. I guess I'll jump right into my thoughts there. Chip, I don't see any way. And I've seen some people hypothesize that, and this is all, social media speculation. I can't say that any of it is necessarily, reputable or not, but can never dismiss social media, Chip. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, Chip, certainly when you started in this industry, well, I guess there was no social media, but at a certain point in time, in the early parts of social media, you'd see something on the boards and be like, all right, yeah, whatever, right? Nowadays, you can't quite dismiss everything you see on social media, but I've seen some social media speculation that John Mateer somehow will find a way to play. If this injury is what it is reported to be, and this is his throwing hand we're talking about, I don't see any way that he can play in 7, 10, 17 days, 18, no, 18 days. I don't see any way he can play that quickly. That's just me. So that's thought number one. Thought number two, Chip, this may ruffle some feathers of Texas fans. This is not to take away from how good this defense has been over the past 3 years. But, Chip, it's undeniable that Texas has had, I don't want to call it luck, but the fortune of facing a hell of a lot of backup quarterbacks, right? And listen, I'm not saying that any of the teams that Texas faced, the Longhorns necessarily would have lost if the starter was there. However, they've had good fortune in facing backup quarterbacks, and it looks like this game, most notably, Chip, is going to be the most notable, where QB1 is out, and they'll have to go to QB2 and Mike Hawkins, who Texas faced last year.
Yeah, I mean, last year Texas did not face DJ Lagway. They did not face Jackson Arnold of Oklahoma. They knocked Carson Beck out of the game in the SEC championship, and Gunnar Stockton came in and got the job done for the Georgia Bulldogs. But yeah, I'm with you. John Mateer. I think the hope is, I saw Matt Zenitz from CBS Sports reporting the hope is to get Mateer back by the end of October, which would mean he misses the Texas OU game. Just a note. We're not making any kind of deal out of that, but something to keep an eye on. Obviously, the SEC conference schedule's coming out for 26, 27, 28, and 29. I like how they're doing this, Eric. So Texas in 2026 will play SEC home games against Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. They'll play away at LSU, at Missouri, at Tennessee, and at A&M. And I'm excited because I've never been to Knoxville. I've never been to Rocky Top. Looking forward to that. Then in 2027, they mix it up. Texas will play at home against Auburn, Georgia, Kentucky, and A&M. And they'll play away at Alabama, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. And then the 2026 schedule will flip home and home in 28, and the 2027 schedule will flip home and home in 2029. That way, Eric, you're playing every other team in the conference at least every 2 years, and you're playing home and away with that team every 4 years. So we're not going to have those weird idiosyncrasies like we've had in the SEC in the past. Like Georgia has never been to Kyle Field. Georgia and Alabama rarely played in the regular season. They went, I think, 10 years without playing each other. So I think the 16, adding Texas and Oklahoma made this a much more doable situation where you can play every team home and away every 4 years. I like it. What say you?
Yeah, Chip, I agree with you. First off, that's kind of the note that you talked about, the Georgia note, having never been to Kyle Field. That's the one that I saw that and I was kind of surprised. Although I guess most fans probably know this, but for those who don't, here's what makes Georgia a bit of an anomaly, right? You play the Florida Georgia game yearly. So regardless, whether divisions, non-divisions, how many teams are in the league, that's going to be one of your games. And then Georgia has to play Georgia Tech out of conference, right? So for a fact, you got 2 games that are accounted for there, which is going to make it kind of them to be a weird kind of schedule, which I think ends up in some of their scheduling deficiencies, for lack of a better word, where they end up not going to certain places. But that aside, this fixes all of that, right? I think especially when you have a 16-team league, it makes sense that all of the teams are somehow playing each other in one form or another, at least in a 3-4 year window, right? It's Chip, if you look in a 4 or 5 year period, whether it's AFC going from division to division or AFC, NFC, the teams end up playing each other pretty much once every 4 or 5 years. It's the way it should be. In specificity to Texas's schedule, I will tell you what I'm excited about. I'm super excited to get you talk about going to Missouri, LSU and Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Chip. Yeah, Chip. I'm super excited to go or to Tennessee. I'm super excited to go to Missouri, LSU, and Tennessee. Excuse me, misspoke there. But I've been to Baton Rouge, and I don't know if I've said this on the air. I know I've said it to you off air. I've been to Pete Maravich Center, and Pete Maravich Center leaves a lot to be desired, folks. Okay, so there's that. I'm looking forward to being to Tiger Stadium. I don't know if all the funds that were supposed to go to any refurbishments to Pete Maravich Center just go straight to football, but that place has seen better days. So I'm looking forward to another trip to Baton Rouge to Tiger Stadium. Definitely looking forward to Neyland Stadium. I mean, Chip, for a guy like me, a kid like me who grew up in Florida, SEC territory, I guess, with the Gators, seen Florida, Tennessee, seen Florida, Georgia, seen Florida, LSU. I'm fired up to go to these places that I saw, football as a kid, right? My earliest memories, I can vaguely remember the Peyton Manning era, but T. Martin, right? Like that's what I can really remember. T. Martin and going into, I'm trying to remember who was the quarterback after T. Martin, but nevertheless, I have memories of those games, Nick Saban at LSU and him turning things around. So super fired up about that. I think, as I said, I think it's a great thing for the league. And I think it's great for fans because you get to now pick and choose like, hey, over the next 3-4 years. And Chip, whenever Texas comes to town, tickets are going to be expensive, right? So I think this gives fans especially an opportunity to say, hey, these are the games we want to prep for. Maybe there's a home game, right? If you're not a season ticket holder, maybe there's a home game that we want to, no disrespect to Texas State, we want to take a pass on that one because we're going to save up for Tennessee, right? Like I just love the fact that they're doing this so far out in advance.
Yeah. And, Texas, as you mentioned, Texas State comes to Austin next year as part of the non-conference schedule, as does Ohio State and UTSA. And how interesting, Mike Gundy gets fired at Oklahoma State, and the top two coaching candidates on everyone's mind are Jeff Traylor at UTSA and GJ Kinney at Texas State. So we'll see how those storylines play out during the offseason. But you're going to get your pick of where you want to go, because you're going to have, as Eric mentioned, you're going to have the road games at LSU, at Missouri, at Tennessee next year. And then you're going to have road games in 27 at Alabama, at South Carolina. Those are the two that Texas hasn't played yet as an SEC member. They have been to Arkansas and to Vanderbilt, of course. So get all the information. Jordan Scruggs did a great job breaking it all down for us over at Horns247.com. And Eric, we talked to Steve Sarkisian on Monday.
Chip, real quick, before you move on from the schedule, can I ask you one thing? From your perspective, do Arkansas fans have a gripe that they got to come here twice?
Yeah. But,
who cares, right?
Yeah.
I had to ask you that real quick.
Yeah, they're going to have a gripe. For some reason they were able to keep the Texas A&M on schedule.
Yeah.
But they had to accommodate. And Texas and Oklahoma are unique, obviously, because they have the neutral site game. And right now that is costing Texas because of the 8-game schedule. Texas only has 3 SEC home games this year because Oklahoma is technically a home game for Texas this year. And we all know that is played at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. So with the 9-game schedule, Texas got what it wanted. Now they can have 4 SEC home games every year and 4 true road games every year, in addition to the neutral site extravaganza in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. And I see CB's asking, are you both going to Gainesville? Yes, Eric and I are both going to Gainesville. I've never covered a game at the Swamp either, so I'm excited to experience that. And apparently DJ Lagway is in a boot.
Yeah.
So, who knows what's going on with DJ Lagway. We do know that Florida has some injuries on the defensive line. Their stud defensive tackle, Caleb Banks, is out, and they do have some depth issues. We'll get into that more next week. But Florida trying to figure things out. Florida off to a 1-3 start. Texas, of course, at 3-1. And Eric, in talking to Steve Sarkisian on Monday, and we reported at Horns247 that it's looking like Quintravian Wisner and CJ Baxter are on schedule to return from their hamstring injuries to play Florida. It also sounds like Emmett Mosley, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, is going to be available for the Florida game. That's the hope. So, Eric, coming off the Sam Houston game, now that you've had a moment to reflect, beating up on a tomato can, a 3-legged dog, 55-0.
Yes.
Everybody felt good coming out of that game. Everybody got playing time. You and I were joking, this is an Oprah Winfrey game. You get playing time. You get playing time. Steve Sarkisian had 75 players played in that game. But what is real in terms of the confidence that was gained in that game, do you think, for Texas? Because now they do get to have something positive to build on here in this off week.
Yeah. And first off, Chip, I know you said Texas played 75. It's interesting because I counted on the participation chart 78, but I could be off there. But I note that for a reason that I'll come back to after I answer your question. A couple things I think are real. One, I think Arch Manning's confidence is real. I think him getting his swagger back is real, Chip. So much of the conversation after the game, right? Not, amongst media types, but online, was about Arch and the quote unquote taunt of Antavius Fish, right? And I said to you, I think during the game, that I think that is who Arch Manning is. Now, I want to be very specific and very clear with what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Arch Manning is a cocky or that type of individual who's around boasting. But I do think, Chip, and this is what I want to workshop with you, I think on the field, I think that's Arch Manning to a T. What did Steve Sarkisian say post-game? He said that he has a little bit more of his grandpa in him than he realizes, as opposed to his uncles, right? And I guess you can take that in many ways. How I took that, Chip, was he's a little bit more flamboyant, right? Again, I never saw Archie Manning play, but from the highlights, he was certainly a scrambler, a guy who, could make things happen. I think that's just part of his game, but also a little more flamboyant, for lack of a better word. I think if we were to fast forward and, kind of project Archie Manning in a 2025 college football world, it's Arch Manning, right? Again, I'm not saying that Arch is going to taunt or stare down every player he makes a play against. But, Chip, I think he is more of that player who's going to show some emotion on the field after a big play than he is Peyton or Eli. And as Steve Sarkisian said to his postgame, that's his swagger. That's him getting in rhythm. That's him feeling confident in himself. I think that's real. So I'll say that, and then quickly with the defense, the amount of players that are emerging to make plays. Trey Moore got his first sack again against a tomato can, but albeit regardless, still a sack. Trey Moore made a play, right? You're seeing depth in the defensive backfield. You're seeing more linebackers. Ty Anthony Smith. We talk about Leon Galafau and Anthony Hill, et cetera, making plays, right? I think that's real. So those are two things I took away from the Sam Houston game that I believe are real, Chip.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about it last week, that Arch Manning finishing the UTEP game 7 of 10 after his 10 straight incompletions, which is hard to do. He went 7 of 10. 3 of those connections were with Ryan Wingo, 1 for a touchdown, and then boom, he picks up where he left off with Ryan Wingo, and Wingo ends up with touchdown catches of 53 and 13 yards against Sam Houston. They talked after the UTEP game, Arch saying, hey, let's pick it up from here. Let's just keep going. And then we saw that. So they need that connection. They also need the connection with DeAndre Moore, who looked good and fast and all the things that you like about DeAndre Moore. People aren't talking about how Texas isn't explosive anymore because these guys are now catching passes in stride from Arch Manning, and they're making yards after the catch Ryan Niblitz making more plays. And so I think those things are real. And then defensively, yeah, the fact that they're rotating 5 and now 6 with Levon Johnson. Levon Johnson gets his first action, gets a tackle for loss after, fighting through the ankle injury early upon his arrival in Austin. So now you can rotate 6 because you should get Alex January back for Florida. That needs to continue to pay big dividends for Texas. Texas only giving up 70, roughly 70 yards per game on the ground. That looks like it's going to be real. And that's huge, because if Texas can make you one-dimensional, that just allows these pass rushers, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Brad Spence, who certainly made his presence felt in the Sam Houston game, and Lance Jackson and Zena Umazolo. Those guys are getting pressure. So you like all those things. And then, Ethan Burke as well. So, and then in the secondary, you're getting really top end play from Jelani McDonald, who you and I both had as a breakout player this year. And so, they were without some guys last week: Kobe Black, Xavier Filsami, and Warren Roberson. But those were minor injuries. I'm told they should be good to go against Florida. Steve Sarkisian's been very pragmatic in, if a guy gets banged up, we're going to rest him because we need him for SEC play. Eric, what do you think about that?
No, Chip, I think that's the right approach. Listen, outside of the Ohio State game, no disrespect to those Group of 5 opponents, but the UTEP game shouldn't have been that close. San Jose State game wasn't close, and it wouldn't have been even what it was had Texas not taken 86 yards off the board because of penalties, right? And some, in execution there. And Sam Houston was what it was. So I agree with the move there. Chip, I want to come back to kind of what you mentioned about Levon Johnson and some of the depth, across defensive line and some of the other spots, because I want to workshop this with you on air. Chip, and I guess I should make the point for the audience, for SEC road games, you can only travel 74 players, right? Does Texas have some decisions to make at certain spots? Because I'm just taking a look. I'm just going to read off a couple spots that I spitballing here with you. Running back, we know they've played 5, right? And I have no reason to believe Texas won't travel 5. We know those 5 are Wisner, Baxter, Gibson, Clark, Simon. At receiver, you're going to get Emmett Mosley back. So, all right, you got Livingston, Mosley, Moore, Niblett, Wingo, probably Day-Day McCutcheon. You think maybe one more. Tight end. I don't know if there's any way they can travel 5, Chip, and I don't think they can, with injuries, Townsend, Winston, Shannon, and Jordan Washington. Now, all 5 of those guys have seen playing time. I think all 5 of those guys played at Ohio State, right? We can go to DT. The 5-6 guys who have been in play there. And then you take a look at the defensive backfield. Chip, am I just making up things out of thin air? Because when I went through the participation chart, I counted 78. I don't know if the number that was given was 75. I counted 78. I could be wrong. I'll go back and double check. But I don't think it's a major issue, but it does seem as if there could be a couple of spots that you have to decide, hey, based on the opponent, we may have to leave a player behind at spot A or spot B. What's your thought, Chip?
Yeah. It could be a tight call. Could be a tight call. And that's crying from a yacht.
Right.
As Steve Sarkisian likes to say. The depth on this team is legit. And so, at quarterback, you're just going to take
3, right?
Yeah. Who's the third?
Oh, well, I guess that's a real question too, because KJ Lacey was the third last week.
Right. So we'll have to watch that because
and then Chip, you've made this point to me during the press box. Shipley has done the kickoff duties, right? I mean, you assume Will Stone's going to do the kickoff duties, but if he's not, then you probably got to leave him home, right? I mean, you think? Well, no, I guess you can't, because if something happens to Shipley, Jack Bomeister can't kick, so you can't leave him home. And that's to Rex St. Charles. Obviously he was saying sarcastically, which what made me laugh. Leave the kicker at home. No, I think you have to bring two. So that's another point, Chip.
Yeah. Will Stone. Steve Sarkisian said his back was tight against UTEP. And then we saw Mason Shipley again kicking off against Sam Houston. The penalties, Eric, came back. There was only one offensive penalty in the UTEP game. There were 8 offensive penalties in the Sam Houston game. There was a holding on Connor Robertson. There was a false start on Connor Robertson. There was an illegal formation. Then there was a holding penalty on Brandon Baker, a false start on Trevor Gooseby, a holding on Rhett Anderson. This is in the fourth quarter, false start in the fourth quarter on Kalik Lockett. But, when I asked Steve Sarkisian on Monday about concerns, what is at the top of the to-do list, he mentioned the penalties. And this can't be a thing. We know it's been a thing. Texas has averaged about 52 yards per game in penalties the last couple of years. But, against Sam Houston, it was 9 penalties for 70 yards. Eric, on the road, that can't be the case.
Chip, why does this team false start so much at DKR?
I don't know.
I asked it rhetorically because I know you don't have an answer, but you made the point about on the road it can't happen. They seemingly do it a lot better on the road than they do at home. So there's that. I'll address the fourth quarter penalties first. Obviously, Rhett Anderson, a walk-on, ready to get in the game. I'm going to let that one slide. The false start on, I believe that was Kalik Lockett. Let me just triple check here real quick that it was.
Yeah, it was.
Kalik Lockett. Okay. I understand a young guy excited to be in the game, probably eager. You're a receiver. Just look down the line. When the ball moves, you move. That you know that. And I think there was one more. Was that a delay of game? You hate to see delay of games at home in the fourth quarter when there's nothing going on. Maybe, again, I'm willing to concede. Maybe you're shuffling in some guys who haven't played, some communication in terms of getting guys in. I'm willing to put those aside. But as I said, this team false starting so much at home is concerning. And Chip, I am a huge believer that what you practice is who you are in games. I know I've made the case kind of speculating about Trey Owens. Maybe he's a gamer, right? Maybe he's a better game player than practice player. That's just me kind of speculating on him alone. Fundamentally speaking, I believe who you are in practice is who you are in games. I'm not saying that maybe Texas is doing those things in practice. What I am saying is if you don't get the habits right now, it's hard to break those things, right? You don't suddenly break them come week 9. That's what I'm saying. So maybe Steve Sarkisian, his words, needs to put his foot in some butts this bye week. And when they return back to game prep, he'll have to put his foot in butts again, because this can't happen. This is what will cost you games in SEC play. And I think, Chip, you and I both agree, this Texas team, as they are finding themselves, as they are trying to peak and find the best version of themselves, the margin for error is super thin. The margin for error is already razor thin in SEC play as is. This year, especially as this team is finding themselves, specifically offensively, you can't make it even more razor thin by committing penalties.
Right. Absolutely. I think, again, there was a lot of positive that came out of the Sam Houston game. Texas rolled up 600 yards of offense. They were balanced. They ran the ball. They passed the ball defensively, 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. It was impressive. Another interception for Jelani McDonald. as Steve Sarkisian pointed out on Monday, that's 3 games in a row in which Jelani McDonald had a hand in a turnover because he tipped a pass that was intercepted against San Jose State. And then he had interceptions against UTEP and Sam Houston. So the defense playing with a lot of confidence and you know, they're making plays at every level. Eric, when we look at Florida, they are 1-3. The loss to, I mean, they've played quality opponents. They opened with Long Island, then they played South Florida. They would have won that game if they hadn't just completely imploded. You had a player spitting at another player on the game-winning drive for South Florida. At LSU, DJ Lagway throws 5 interceptions. The Florida defense still holds LSU to 13 points because one of those was a pick 6. So despite, all those interceptions, the defense only gave up 13 points to LSU at LSU. And then they lost to the Miami Hurricanes, who are looking like one of the best teams in the country. There was speculation, does something happen to Billy Napier before the Texas game? It does not sound like that is going to happen. So Florida, like Texas, has an off week this week. But, DJ Lagway's in a boot. Caleb Banks is out. It looks like LJ McCray, their, super stud sophomore edge rusher, is also going to be out of this game. And even one of the backup defensive tackles was on crutches after the Miami Hurricanes game. You can't pay attention to that stuff, though, Eric, right? I mean, Texas is coming to town. What better way for Billy Napier to get back on the right track than with a home win over the preseason number 1 team, right?
No, I agree with you. Super quick, you talked about Billy Napier and the speculation. Scott Strickland is not Jeremy Foley, right? I guess for, the audience, Jeremy Foley, former longtime AD at Florida. I remember, Chip, him firing Ron Zook, right? Because he realized what needed to be done later could be done now, right? And what followed was Urban Meyer and obviously no disrespect to Steve Spurrier, an unprecedented level of success for that program. So, yeah, I do believe that Billy Napier's job is safe for the time being, unless things completely go off the rails and there's more spitting and, blowout losses. So there's that. No, I agree with you. This is still a talented Florida Gator team. We talked about, we won't dive too much into the game prep until next week, but kind of high level here, Chip. I think it's pretty clear DJ Lagway, and again, you talk about him being back in the walking boot. It seems pretty clear to me that he wasn't right. That 5 interception game, I went back and watched, not the entire game, just his throws. I mean, he just looks all over the place, right? And it's almost like pot calling the kettle black, because they were saying the same thing. We were saying the same thing about one Arch Manning just 2 weeks ago, right? So you didn't want to say too much like, oh, man, look at that quarterback. He's clearly hurt, and not say the same thing about the quarterback here in Austin. But, yeah, DJ Lagway just didn't look right in the offense as a whole. Just looks out of sync. I think what I'm super curious of, and I don't know that we're going to learn that against Texas, Chip, is if DJ Lagway doesn't play, is that a byproduct of that being the offense looking out of sync? Is that a byproduct of the quarterback maybe not being right, or the whole offense? Because that, would be a Billy Napier problem. If it's the quarterback, you're not going to find out against this Texas defense, right? That'll have to wait for another day. If it's the offense, then maybe you can glean some things. Maybe you can scheme up some things that could work, right? Again, I don't think it's going to work enough to beat this defense, to beat this team. But that's kind of the way I'm approaching Florida from an offensive perspective. And you did a great job talking about some of the injuries they have even on defense, right? Which they certainly cannot afford at this point, considering the defense is the strength of this team. But to John's point here, yeah, you can never overlook the Gators at home. One of the things that and Chip, we talked about this in the preseason. And again, I don't want to take too much of your time. Going to the Swamp is a hostile environment. Now, it's much more hostile when Florida's 3-1 versus 1-3. And I'm not saying fans won't show out because Texas hasn't been there since 1940, I believe. I hope I got the year right. I could be wrong. I know it hasn't been modern era football. It's been a long time, right? So fans are going to be fired up. I've talked to plenty of people who, while some of the wind is out of their sails, Chip, about this trip, they're still going, and they're still going to make noise when the game is 0-0. Now, if the game is 14-0 pretty early on, they'll head for the exits. But they'll be fired up, right? So I do think it'll still be a hostile environment. How long that environment remains hostile, that'll be up to the Longhorns.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coming into the year, Florida had, 4 starters returning on the offensive line, or 3, sorry. No, 4 of 5. And they brought back, Jaden Baugh, who's one of the better running backs in the SEC. Yeah. Eugene Wilson. They have dudes on that offense. And then defensively, the strength is up front, even though they have suffered some injuries. Look, Florida has been recruiting pretty well. So this will be a top test. And look, people are talking about John Mateer at Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's defensive front is legit. We saw that in the Oklahoma win over Auburn. As I know, there are all kinds of questions and controversy over that with the Satania touchdown that should have been ruled an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. But bottom line is the Oklahoma defense played really well against Auburn, Jackson Arnold in the Jackson Arnold Bowl. Eric, we've got any other nuggets to touch on? Let me see here. Again, defense, 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks against Sam Houston. Special teams, Ryan Niblett making plays in the punt return game. Do you feel like Steve Sarkisian's been holding back quite a bit offensively for SEC play? Or do you think this offense is just in natural evolution?
Chip, I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think the offense is in natural evolution. I also think Steve Sarkisian has held back a bit. But Chip, here's the point that I don't think many people are willing to consider. I don't think it's been necessarily, some decision like, oh, I'm not going to show everything for SEC play. I think, and I know I've said this to you in private, I think if Steve Sarkisian had a veteran team, let's just say last year's team had another year of eligibility and they were playing this schedule, I think you would see more of some of the things you've seen in the past. We were there in fall camp, Chip, when Steve talked about, some of the pre-snap stuff we need to clean up, or some of the defense getting the better of the offense. As a coach, you have to play to your team's strengths. And I'm curious if some of the more imaginative, creative, or some of the more pre-snap motion-y type of stuff that Steve Sarkisian would naturally do, you just haven't seen it because, all right, this particular 2025 Texas Longhorn offense aren't ready to do it just yet at the level that Steve Sarkisian wants to do it. Is that not a fair answer? I'm asking you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are starting to see more of the motion and a quarter into the season, you should see that. And look, they've got a week off to polish up some things. Remember last year, how many defenses broke tendency even in 2023, showed them things that they hadn't seen before. I'm sure Florida's working on some stuff in this off week to break tendency and give Texas some other things to think about. But I do think we're, one of the things that really stood out, and this sounds stupid, was that slant touchdown to Ryan Wingo. We haven't seen a lot of those slants that are sort of bread and butter plays for Steve Sarkisian, and not sure why, but when they needed it, they got it down in the red zone, and those are big time plays for DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo. So,
Chip, I mentioned the whip route to you during the game, right?
Yeah.
Like, the whip route was a staple of Xavier Worthy. Again, I think most people know what the whip route is, but if you don't, it's kind of that quick in-breaking slant, and you kind of put your foot in the ground, come right back out. It's like kind of a whipping motion, right? We haven't seen that, and I speculated that to you, could that be because it's no one's running it the way Xavier Worthy could? That could be, but also, as you said, Chip, maybe that's just, hey, we don't want to show it just yet. So that could be a reason.
Yeah, and I think DeAndre Moore is a guy who would run that route, and he's coming off the concussion, so and had a productive game. So Texas has had to navigate some, the hamstring injuries to Quintravian Wisner and CJ Baxter. I mean, Quintravian Wisner's missed 3 games. It's going to be hard for him to get to 1,000 yards, missing 3 games. But they have depth, and they were able to run the ball. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from James Simon. Wondering if he's moving up the old depth chart. But yeah, I and people were saying, I think CB even said, the deep ball touchdown to Ryan Wingo, the 53-yarder, looked like Quinn Ewers to Worthy and A.D. Mitchell against Alabama in 2023. Texas needs those plays. We know that. We know the Steve Sarkisian play action offense is going to take shots down the field, and you got to hit on them. You got to hit on 1 or 2 a game to really force defenses to respect it. And so that was a big development in the Sam Houston game, because people are like, oh, that was against air. Arch was missing passes against air. Against UTEP, against San Jose State, he was missing passes we've never seen him miss. And so, we'll wrap up football on this. Arch Manning, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, the mental state of Arch Manning. The guy's never been criticized in his athletic life. He's been seen as, when he shows up, there's like this aura around him. This, he's a Marvel character. Well, no, he's not. He's a human. Things didn't go well against Ohio State, and he got criticized in a way that he's, questioned in a way that he's never experienced before. And it lingered. And then he looked good against Sam Houston. What happens, Eric, if he skips the ball to a wide open receiver to open the Florida game? Does all that come crashing back, that, confidence crisis, or has he built up some calluses to just shake it off and come back and connect on the next pass?
It's a very real question, and that's why I'd said a couple of weeks ago that stretch, coming out of the UTEP game, Arch Manning was facing the first real adversity in his football life. It's the question I'd asked Steve Sarkisian going into the Sam Houston game. You would think he's built up some calluses. With that being said, he's still a 21-year-old, young man. And you would like to think that at this point in his career, 3 years in, especially having backed up Quinn Ewers for 2 of those years, you can have that next play mentality. Now, and I'm teeing you up for this one, right? Steve Sarkisian talked about some guys not having that next play mentality in fall. I'll let you read into that what you want. I'm sure
Right.
Chip will give it his thought there. But my answer to your question, Chip, is I do believe, and Rex, I'm going to throw Rex's comment up here because it's where I'm kind of want to land the plane here. One bad pass shouldn't shatter his confidence. That's where I would like to think after the last few weeks that he's built up some calluses. But I would say to Rex and also to the broader audience, he is still a 21-year-old kid, and you don't know how these things can affect someone who hasn't really faced this measure of adversity in their athletic life, Chip.
Yeah. Well, going to Columbus, even though that game was at 11 a.m., that place was loud. The horseshoe was hopping. Arch has experienced a true road game, and the Swamp is up there among the best in best in college football in terms of hostile environments. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this Arch Manning, has he gotten over the hump? Is this the new and improved Arch Manning, ready to go on the road, because he's going to be in two crazy environments back to back, at the Swamp and at the Cotton Bowl for the Red River Shootout, which is unlike any other game. We talk about how the players come out of the tunnel in the OU side getting booed like crazy, and that some players struggle to breathe when that game starts because they're so amped up and there's so much going on. And let's see how Arch Manning handles that. All right, Eric, a couple quick notes before we get to take it or leave it. There is a baseball game Saturday. Jim Schlossnagel and Tim Tadlock, the head coach at Texas Tech, both schools have off weeks in football, so they decided, hey, let's play a fall ball baseball game at Dell Diamond on Saturday at 1:00. So that is happening. So Texas baseball fans, if you are eager to see some of the 23 newcomers who are going to be playing for the Longhorns this year, head out to Dell Diamond. Well, go to horns247.com and read my story about it. There is a link to tickets in that story. The tickets are all through the Round Rock Express. So you have to go to the link in my story, or you can find it on my Twitter at Chip Brown 247. If you want to take your kids out to the ball game, Texas Tech, 1:00 Saturday at Dell Diamond. And it's a 12-inning game because they want to get a bunch of pitchers into the game, a bunch of players into the game. You probably will not see Dylan Volantis, the praying mantis, because he just got over mono. Poor guy. I had that in high school, and you can't do anything. You just kind of wait for it to leave your body. And so Dylan Volantis trying to get his strength back, Eric, but little fall ball baseball for the fans on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm hoping to be able to get out there and watch that one, to see the new look Texas Longhorns. A little disappointed won't see Dylan Volantis, but definitely excited about that. Apologies if you see me looking at my phone. I just got a text from the great Taylor Estes, who's asking me about us recording. So I'll have a conversation with you off air about that. So one of us might be in trouble, Chip, and that person be me. But continue.
Well, if Carson Tinney, I'll just point him out, the Notre Dame transfer catcher who was a Buster Posey Award finalist along with Rylan Galvan last year. He is a big, strong dude, and he's very confident. He said, I came here because this program has a chance to win it all, and that's why I'm here. And Aiden Robbins, the outfielder from Seton Hall, who batted .422 last year, visited LSU, A&M, Georgia, Vanderbilt, and picked Texas. He's a confident fellow. He said that center field job is mine to lose. I'm sure Jonah Williams will have something to say come spring ball. But
Carson Tinney said he can have no issues getting out of the dish, right?
Oh yeah, no issues hitting the ball out of the park in the dish. Yeah,
I love that confidence.
Yeah. And so we also had a chance to talk to Sean Miller and the Texas basketball team. All I'm going to say about this is my guy, Camden Heide, says he's the best shooter on the team. Jordan Pope says he's the best shooter on the team. I'm going to roll with Camden Heide. Eric.
Listen, I think it's great that they both think they're the best shooters on the team. If they are, the winners of that will be Texas basketball. Because I tell you what the Longhorns need, shooters.
Shooting. Any shooting. All right, you ready for some take it or leave it?
I am ready, Chip.
All right, then let's get to it. Let's see who's serving first.
I'm serving to you.
Okay.
Take it or leave it, number one. Having Contravian Wisener and C.J. Baxter back from injury at Florida will make a big difference for the Texas offense. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I think it will because, first of all, these are experienced guys, especially Contravian Wisener. I mean, look what Contravian Wisener did at Texas A&M. Horrible, very hostile environment. You and I were down on the field. That place was coming apart. What did he do? He ran it 30 plus times for, 186 yards in his signature game up to this point as a Longhorn. Nothing's going to faze Contravian Wisener about the swamp. And he's a guy who's proven he will hang on to the ball. He can catch the football. He was the third leading receiver on the football team last year. And C.J. Baxter, if they can get him back, we know he's tough between the tackles. And I think having both of their juice, Eric, is important right now. So I'm going to take this. What say you?
Absolutely. I don't know in what world having your top two backs would make a big difference, but especially to the point that you made. Heading into a hostile environment, what does Steve Sarkisian always say? He wants to be able to pack a run game and a defense for going on the road. Well, he should have both of those. We know he'll have the defense, but having Baxter and Wisener should definitely help solidify the run game, especially with the young backs getting the opportunity to get some carries. And let's not undersell, and we'll get into this a little bit more next week, Jarrett Gibson coming home as well, right? He wants to have a big game, Gainesville native. So I will take it.
Yeah, and some of the younger backs have struggled to identify exactly where the run is supposed to hit. So you need that veteran presence at running back. Okay. Take it or leave it. Number 2, Eric, you are surprised sophomore linebacker Tyanthony Smith has more tackles, 18, and sacks, 1, than Anthony Hill Jr., who has 16 tackles and 0 sacks through 4 games. Take it or leave it.
I'm not exactly surprised, so I'm going to leave it. Tyanthony, and listen, it's not like Tyanthony Smith's playing only garbage time snaps. He's playing real snaps, right? But I do think when you are able to, and we talked about this a little bit, you're able to rotate a Tyanthony Smith in from time to time. Anthony Hill gets a lot of attention on the football field. That's going to allow for Smith, Leonga Lafau, whomever, to make plays. So I'm not wholly surprised. Now, if the season ended this way, I'd be stunned, right? But through this point, or up to this point, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I am a little surprised. I mean, I know Tyanthony Smith is a guy that the coaches love. Leonga Lafau says, this guy's pushing me every single day. And I think he's a special player. I mean, look, you're going to probably lose Anthony Hill Jr. to the NFL draft after this season, and knowing that Tyanthony Smith and you'd like to think Leonga Lafau will be back next year. That's a pretty solid linebacking core right there. So I'm gonna take this just for now. But yeah, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this as the season progresses. All right. Take it or leave it, number 3, Eric.
Take it or leave it, number 3, to bring us home. Your biggest concern going into SEC play is Arch Manning's mental makeup. Take it or leave it.
Okay, I'm going to give Arch the benefit of the doubt here, and I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to say the penalties are my biggest concern because They're averaging 78 yards per game in penalties, Eric. 78 yards. That's a chunk of your offense right there. And it's too much. So I'm going to leave this. What say you?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm going to leave it. I don't care who your quarterback is, right? If you're consistently starting drives, 1st and 15, 1st and 20, or you get into 2nd and manageable and you go backwards to the penalty, it's going to affect the whole offense, right? So I'm going to leave it, but to give a different answer than you, because my answer was going to be penalties, I'll say 3rd down conversions, right? And I guess that kind of ties into the penalties because some of the penalties is what have put them behind the chains. So I'll go penalties / being able to convert on 3rd down.
All right. There you have it, kids. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Please, if you will, like and subscribe to the Horns247 YouTube channel. And head over to horns247.com and become an annual member. There's so many perks to becoming an annual member at horns247.com. Of course, you get all the VIP content, but you get all the VIP content on all the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 Sports Network. And you get much more than that. So for Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.